Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Grace Corrigan, and I'm the employment specialist at Insight. And as you heard, the session today is being recorded. We would love for you to keep your cameras on so we can see your smiling faces, but ask if you could keep your mute on while you're listening, just to eliminate any kind of background noise. And then after the presentation, we will open the workshop up for questions. You can also ask your questions in the chat, and we will address them appropriately. I'd like to share a little bit about Insight before we start. And we are just really excited. We're celebrating our 20th anniversary this year as a nonprofit. And it's just a significant milestone for us. Our mission is changing hearts and minds, leveraging obstacles, and unlocking potential. And we do this through our programs, our education program and our employment program. And we do focus on individuals with disabilities and barriers. And if you want to learn more about our programs and what we do, please go to insight.org and you find out more information there, or you can always call us. We love to chat with people. Now, jobsnow.org is part of our employment program. And one of the ways we connect with job seekers is through these GetAhead events, which are standalone workshops created to give job seekers of all abilities additional tools and resources for their job search. If you want to view past GetAhead events, you can go to our website, which is jobsnow.org, and just click on the event tab. And as I say, we've had a lot of these GetAhead events already, so there's lots of great information there. We also put on in-person job fairs, and we're working on our 2025 job fair schedule right now. So you can also check on our Jobs Now website for those updates. So this morning, our workshop is entitled Interviewing 101, Best Practices on Landing Your Career. And it's a pleasure for me to introduce Aden Ling, an HR representative from Microchip. So welcome, Aden, and I will hand the workshop over to you.
Great. Thanks for the introduction, Grace. Welcome to my GetAhead workshop, Interviewing 101. I set a realistic goal this morning to have everyone leave this session feeling confident as job seekers and realizing that, hey, you guys do have existing interview skills that can help you succeed in the interview process. Just to introduce a little bit about myself, I work as an HR representative for Microchip Technology out in Gresham, Oregon. I've been here for about 3 years, and I graduated from the University of Oregon in 2020. I graduated with a psychology degree with a minor in business administration. And I thought I was ready for the job market, but 2020 was a weird time. It was during the height of COVID, and we had a lot of the job seeker market was super convoluted. So there's a lot of people who, quit their existing jobs and wanted to get remote jobs, which made it kind of harder for new college grads like myself to, seek that entry level position. It felt like a lot of people were applying to jobs that they were overqualified for. But I learned a lot as a recent candidate and working as an HR representative. I actually have 5 years of recruiting experience, so I can kind of speak on the best of both worlds and give some tips. So my presentation today will go over the assessment process as well as resumes, just a little bit about resumes and cover letters. I know Insight had another GetAhead event, and I'd encourage you to go to those too, because each employer has a different, and recruiter has a different take on what resumes and cover letters should be looking like. I'll also be going over preparing for the interview as well as a subject called behavioral interviews. That's where I'll definitely flex my psychology muscles. And I'll go over post-interview etiquette and have a chance for Q&A. So the candidate assessment begins at first contact, and those are the four bullet points you see in front of you are the most common ways to kind of begin, hey, this is how I start approaching employers. And I'd really encourage people to put their best foot forward at career fairs and networking events, because Microchip, we have hired people straight from career fairs, and if I haven't done that, I usually give out my card for candidates that I believe can, be successful in the jobs that I have, and encourage them to apply. And it kind of gives you a chance to separate yourselves from other candidates when you kind of impress us during those career fairs. Um, Informal introductions refer to like your connections, your network. I definitely have a lot of friends and coworkers that have gotten jobs during times of need due to their relationships. So I would encourage you to kind of broaden your engagement with a lot of different community clubs, such as Insight. Um, I know Workforce Oregon has a lot of resources as well. And everything really starts with a job application submission. Once you submit that application, the HR recruiter and the hiring manager will review your resume. If there's a cover letter section to the job application, and it's required, I definitely work on that. But we're seeing that practice phase out. Um, I'll go over a little bit about that later on. And what'll happen is once we review resumes, we'll start making phone calls or sending emails. So it is super important for candidates to have voicemail set up. We do factor in timeliness of response. So in a world where we're hiring like crazy, oftentimes I can't wait for more than a week for a response. Um, and then that initial phone call, if you don't end up getting a voicemail, could act as that first interview. um, During that phone call, we'll ask maybe 3 to 5 questions, just to kind of gauge you as a candidate and how you communicate on the phone, because a lot of our jobs here um, require being able to communicate effectively when you're not face to face. After that phone call, we'll formally invite you to an interview, and it could be in person or virtual. So it is important to try to take as many opportunities as you can, just because it'll help you kind of understand, hey, how do I react when I'm in person versus how do I react when I'm in a virtual interview? Because you never know until you actually go through it. And then the offer process will start. During that process, it's very clear that, hey, I want to hire you, right? So it is important to be upfront with what you want. Anybody who gets to that point is gonna gonna be able to be that person that, hey, like I want you in the door as soon as possible. So whatever I can do on my end to help you, I will do. And I encourage applicants to reach out. If you submit that job application and you haven't been contacted within a week or two, then yeah, feel free to call us. It does show initiative, and sometimes it is a fact that, hey, we're swamped, so we might have missed your application. So we appreciate it when you kind of follow up with stuff. And this whole candidate assessment ends on your first day. So to go over resumes briefly, a standard job opening at Microchip will have about 80 applicants at least. So it is a large amount of resumes, and the first filter we do is a 6 to 8 second initial scan of resumes. I like to alleviate some concerns for some people who think that companies are using AI to scan resumes. I know that there are people who do that, but I think of the hiring process as a speed dating type of deal. So like if you get rejected because a computer said no, then it honestly probably works better on your case. At Microchip, we all the recruiters will physically look at resumes. We'll go through it one by one. So during the first scan, it's 6 to 8 seconds, and we do catch things. So I'd encourage you to use a simple layout to highlight, your degree. If you're pursuing a degree, then put a projected graduation date, and try to be objective throughout the whole resume. So sometimes if you strike a tone of being super confident and aggressive, it might work in your favor. I would definitely look at the job posting because and the company website itself, because it'll give you an idea of what kind of vibe they have. So I'm more of a person that's better safe than sorry. So I would definitely just be objective and just state facts, facts about your internship or co-ops or any relevant work that you might have done. If you have any education, then yes, put in any, coursework that could be relevant and, give you the edge compared to other candidates. I know some people have written books before, so yeah, it's always good to put a publication out. Um, it takes a lot to write a book, so it not only shows that hey, you can write in a way where it's clear, but it also means that you can work in a team. And when I talk about work history, I really want to stress, hey, put relevant work history. When I was looking for a job, I would tailor my resume based off of the job posting or the job I'm looking for. In 2020, like I spent a year looking for a job, and it was at a point where I was like, okay, I can't just have one cookie cutter resume. Because as a candidate, you have a lot of experience that you can draw upon. So that being said, you don't have to put every single job you've ever had, but it is important to, yeah, put your jobs that can apply for the position, and list them in reverse chronological order, meaning that, hey, the most current job, work experience that you have is up in the top, and it just goes down. Avoid graphics or non-traditional bullet points. These oftentimes get really messed up in our ATS system, and they're not easy to look on the eye. So sometimes by mistake, and a hiring manager or the recruiter will disposition, or put you in the pile where we have to say no, um, just because your resume is not legible for us to read. I make it a habit to pop open the resume itself as well. But sometimes during that 6 to 8 second initial scan of resumes, we ourselves have a timeline to follow. And so when we see something where it's like, hey, this person doesn't seem very organized, then it's almost automatic for some people. So to keep going with resumes, if you are a new college grad or just starting off trying to find a job, please keep your resume at one page only. As the recruiter, like it's our job to understand you as a candidate, and if you just graduated from college or high school, um, we know that hey, you don't have a lot of experience. So when a person puts a 2 page resume in front of me and I'm like, you just graduated from college, it makes me kind of question a little bit more and maybe look at your resume a little bit more thoroughly to understand, hey, what's going on here. Um, be sure to put in any awards or activities that you might have. So scholarships, or even like something as simple as, hey, like if you work at a job place that awards you a certificate for perfect attendance or something like that, like, yeah, put that in there. Because it is sometimes hard for us to separate people. Proofread carefully. Um, Grammatical errors and misspellings are a big red flag for us sometimes. Like 1 or 2 errors, not a big deal for us, but like if it's riddled with errors, then yeah, it's almost an automatic no for Microchip too. Um, be specific and put data on your job, or your work experience. So like when you're listing out a project or even a work project or a job duty you have, use numerical numbers and have facts with you. That'll be enticing for recruiters. It's okay to not provide that like a whole summary of what you did, because you want to save some of those bullet points as talking points. So like your resume is that cheat sheet throughout that interview process. Whenever you're looking at whenever you get interview question, feel free to look at that resume and just be like, oh yeah, I can apply this bullet point and be able to talk and communicate that, hey, I'm an active contributor to that project or that job duty. Um, Use a professional email address. So if you don't have one, I just do first dot last name and something significant like a birth year. Um, Ensure your voicemail is set up with a greeting. I think the standard greeting that all phones have is fine, but I've definitely called some people where they have some like super dramatic voicemail messages, and sometimes that is a big like, oh, okay, I'll move on to the next person because this person doesn't seem to be as professional as others. And be sure that your voicemail is not full. If your voicemail is full, there's no way for us to contact you. We might email you, but at that point, we might move on to another candidate. So to go over cover letters briefly, if the company asks for cover letters, they want them. If not, you can use that cover letter as an opportunity to, stand out from others, or explain why, like if you apply for a job that you think you're underqualified for, the cover letter could help you out with like just showing off, hey, like even though I don't fit your cookie cutter mold, I still am able to succeed in this job, and it should be clear and concise. So it only will help you. When I talk to some of our tenured recruiters, some of them say like, hey, I don't even look at cover letters. Others are like, hey, I really look at cover letters. So as a candidate, like just know yourself. And when you're applying for the job, if you're thinking, oh, I don't hit every bullet point, or I don't feel confident about my ability, then yeah, use that cover letter to be like, okay, I might not be able to do, for example, management, because I have no management experience, but you can list out like stuff like, hey, I was a club leader. Um, it should be clear and concise, meaning that one page is preferable. My cover letter is about 3 to 4 paragraphs, with the fourth paragraph being like a closing 2 statements. Um, and yeah, I think it is something that you ought to make personal. If you Google a cover letter and you just kind of, or you get Chat GPT to make it, sometimes it's pretty clear for recruiters. So definitely try to put your effort in there, because you can showcase your communication style. Um, you can also showcase your company knowledge. Like maybe the About Us page will show a lot. At Microchip, we have something called guiding values. And if you drop that, sometimes it causes us to kind of look at your application more, being like, okay, you took the initiative to research the company, you know about our products, our culture. So you make yourself an interesting candidate by doing that. So going on to preparing for the interview. So if you can, feel free to be prepared and buy a suit or professional attire. Um, it depends on the industry you're going for, and the job itself. So like if you're trying to work at a warehouse, then no, you don't have to wear it's. I mean, if you feel good, look good, wear a suit, but it's not necessary to have like a suit and tie, at least at Microchip. But if you're interviewing for a customer facing position, like a sales position, or even at a retail store, it is important to just present yourself. It's not a red flag for me if somebody asks about the appropriate interview attire. That's something where I'm like, oh, okay, you took the care to understand our culture. Do your homework about the company and position. Throughout interview processes, like we will ask some things like, hey, do you know, like at Microchip, for example, we'll be like, do you know what a fab is, or what a clean room is? And so if it won't hurt my feelings if nobody knows about it, just because our industry is a little bit specialized and not a lot of people know about it. However, if a candidate's like, hey, I know exactly what a clean room is, I know what wafers are and stuff like that, then I'm like, oh, okay, perfect. Like you just gave another plus sign on top of your profile. Um, it's also important to be prepared with some common questions that you might be asked. So like when I was going through the job market in 2020, like I had a spreadsheet that uh, was kind of my motivation to keep going and pursue a career that I wanted. And I ended up applying to 334 jobs. And throughout my whole interview process for a lot of them, it was very common for people to ask like, hey, what's your biggest strength? What's your biggest weakness? What would your manager say about your performance? Stuff like that was almost standard. So like, it's important, like if you're, an engineer, um, specifically a software engineer, then you might be asked like, hey, do you have a GitHub? What kind of languages do you know? Um, so it's it's good to be prepared, and one way you can prepare is by practicing with a friend before your interview, using flashcards, or taking just interviews in general. Like the more interviews you go through, the more confident you will be. brush up on technical acumen. So like in Microchip, we're a semiconductor company. So if you understand like yield, process engineering, um, about failures, then yeah, if you fit that in during the interview, then it's even more impressive for the recruiter. Um, Review your resume, definitely adjust it if you have some stuff that's not relevant there. Um, the funny thing about my interview at Microchip was that they talked to me more about my extracurricular activities than my education itself. So like sometimes like it really depends on the HR recruiter as well as the hiring manager, but you never know what can give you the edge, and that maybe that hobby is something that might help you out. So um, my general advice for putting in hobbies or fun activities that you do regularly um, is to kind of look at the company. At Microchip, like we really treasure like work time off and stuff like that. So like if you have a hobby, sometimes that hiring manager might have the same hobby, and it ends up being a conversation that's a little longer. And sometimes it's an indication of like, okay, you're building repertoire, you fit the culture, and you can demonstrate, how to articulate yourself. I'll go over behavioral interviews. So a behavioral interview is focused on how a past experience will help predict future performance. We call this process hiring for attitude at Microchip. It's something that's closely aligning with my psychology degree too. To give you some uh, more info about this, as an HR representative, I have three departments that I hire for, and I can't pretend to be an expert, like a technical expert, for engineering or software or production. But my job as an HR recruiter is to understand if you are the right candidate in terms of personality wise and work ethics. So oftentimes you'll go through the interview process at any company. Um, It'll have the HR representative and the hiring manager. So usually it's two interviews, or it could be all at once. But you'll notice that, hey, the HR person's really just kind of tackling interpersonal situations and trying to ask me questions on how I react during these, social situations. And the hiring manager will focus on more of the technical stuff. One thing that one of the engineer hiring managers that I work with does for some technician roles is giving a math question. So like um, that's one of my most recent examples, I guess. So to go over what a high performer would look like, that's somebody who is highly collaborative, has no excuses, will take ownership, will follow up and meet commitments. You're able to be self-directed, innovative, and empathetic. So everyone in this room is probably thinking to themselves, like, yeah, that's definitely common for any job that you're going to apply to. Um, but I'm here to show you kind of how to make yourself look a little better during those behavioral questions. So you can see here's a list of questions I'll be going over today. Um, this first question is trying to understand, like, at the end of the day, you're going to be working with a team. Even if you work remote, there might still be a team, like a team member that's not pulling their weight. So whenever you respond to those type of questions, please demonstrate that you show empathy for others, because at the end of the day, like, we spend 50% of our time at home, 50% of the time at work. Sometimes the stuff at home will influence your work ethic out uh, at work. So you might not be performing the best during that time, and that could be the case for your team member. So being able to kind of show empathy, being like, okay, I know this person was slacking. Here's my example. I was in a class project. I did all the work. If you just say that, then I might just be like, okay, that's kind of a little braggadocious. But if you go through and you're like, hey, like, I had a class project and I found out that my, coworker or my classmate was not pulling their weight. I asked them why, and it turns out that one of their family members is going through some health event. So after you learned about that, you flexed your style and approach to kind of talk to that classmate and be like, hey, okay, I understand that. Okay. You have to go, be a caretaker. So let me take care of this stuff so that you can maybe help me with stuff that I am not able to take care of. And so that not only shows initiative that, hey, I can, work with people when they're in a bad situation, and overcome a difficulty as a team. Just because at the end of the day, like a lot of my projects, especially not only in HR, but for our engineering department, for our production department, even our inventory department, like, hey, it's a group effort, group result. So at the end of the day, we're just here to do a job. And it's good that you were, as a candidate, if I see you say that stuff, I'm like, okay, you're able to be adaptable too. The next question is, hey, tell me about a time when you were struggling to meet a deadline or commitment you made. It's if somebody says like, oh, I've never done that, like then I'm kind of like, okay, really? Because life happens. Maybe you got sick. Maybe he just simply ended up forgetting about it. So it's only human behavior. So like your response should demonstrate, hey, you took ownership of that problem. You were like, okay, I know why I did that or what happened there. Um, a lot of times, maybe somebody else is a factor for that problem. But at the end of the day, you own that project. So you're not making any excuses or blaming other people. Um, and it's good to show that, hey, even though you knew that you were going to miss that deadline, you were still proactive. You still gave yourself a chance to complete the task or project before the deadline, and you communicated with people because um, oftentimes, like we call it pass down, regardless of what department it is here. But like, if you're not able to do it, somebody else will be able to pick up the slack, and it's important to be able to communicate. Um, if you're able to be innovative and provide alternatives to maybe hustle up the process, that's also a good experience that you can communicate to the recruiter, and that'll make me think, okay, I can hire this person because at the end of the day, stuff happens and you're able to at least try to handle it. The next question is, tell me about a time when working in a team was challenging. um, your response should demonstrate you're highly collaborative. So, meaning that, yes, this person might personality wise not vibe with you. Maybe it's when conflict happens, but you took a step where, hey, I'm going to diffuse the conflict. I'm going to try to encourage collaboration. We're all here to do a job. Um, and that also shows, hey, you're able to, if you, uh, if you're in a team like at Microchip, a lot of times people are equal. And so when a team is failing, it just means somebody didn't take the initiative to be a leader and drive change. So we encourage all our employees to, hey, if you see something wrong, say something. If you like think you can do a better job, if you think you have an alternative route to complete the task, then yeah, like talk about it, communicate, organize. Um, there's always it's worse to not even try than to at least give it an attempt. So you can also show that you are proactive and you communicate effectively to other team members, and just adaptability in general, for that type of question. Tell me about a time when you had to be creative to solve a problem. So like that is actually one of the questions we ask. Um, your response like that I'm looking for should demonstrate that you're self-directed. So a lot of times, like you might be given a task that the instructions aren't clear. So if you took the steps to get familiarized, like say it through the interview, like step by step, be systematic with your response during that time. So then I can know, like, okay, like even though you weren't given all the necessary tools to accomplish the task or project, you referred to policy, you referred to spec, you talked to your tenured coworkers, trying to figure out how to fix this thing. Um, this question is your opportunity to flex your technical acumen if you're an engineer candidate or anything that's related to something that's measurable, uh, measured technically. So like I'm thinking technicians, I'm thinking even production. Um, the next question is talking about. I'll ask this candidate, tell me about a time you didn't know how to do something. Um, your response should definitely demonstrate all these characteristics here. Um, I think to focus on this last point, because a lot of these points are the same from the other questions. Your superiors or colleagues, like a lot of times, like they're told something and maybe they don't agree with it either. But at the end of the day, they have to get the team to, rally and try it out. The biggest thing I tell our employees, if they're, coming to me asking, hey, like, I don't get why we have this process change. Like it's not efficient, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, we don't have data to argue that, oh, okay, this doesn't work. So I really encourage people to, hey, just take it in the chin. Definitely talk about how, like, okay, like, even though this changed the process and delayed the project or task, I still did it. I still tried to, understand why we're doing this, and provided feedback to our superior. So whenever the HR recruiter is doing behavioral interviewing, um, we're looking for people who provide real situations that you were actively involved in. So if you're in a group project or you're part of a team where you kind of took a backseat to it, I'd recommend not talking about it unless you have to. So like if you have nothing else, then talk about it. But if you have other examples where you're an active contributor or a driver, um, provide it to us, and we'll be able to get a clear picture if you give us details on who, what, when, where. Um, and being able to like identify an issue or problem in the beginning of this whole process is like, oh, okay, like you're proactive. Like even though you're getting paid to do this production operator job, just doing data inputs and making sure things look good, you took it upon yourself when you saw a problem and went through the who, what, when, where. um, and definitely present a situation where, hey, it ended up concluding to be a good thing. Like there was a conclusion. It wasn't left just kind of in the back burner. And definitely own your contributions in a team project. A lot of times when you're working in a team, sometimes it's easy to undervalue the work you've done, but like, hey, like if that's your example, then own it. Like talk about, okay, I did this, my coworker did this and all that stuff, and that at least gives me a real life example, and it gives you credibility at the end of the day. um, to nail the interview, I'd recommend arriving 10 to 15 minutes early. um, it'll help you kind of de-stress, take a sip of water, go to the bathroom. You'd be surprised how many biological factors affect you during the interview process. I tend to do a lot better when I'm relaxed, so I do breathing techniques before interviews sometimes. Um, I'd recommend turning off your phone. It's not great whenever you have an awkward interruption. For me personally, I don't really mind. If it's an emergency, I get it. But you might have that hiring manager or recruiter kind of take that as a, oh, okay, like you didn't treat this interview as something serious or something like that. Um, we also look at physical traits too, like, hey, like if you're able to keep consistent eye contact, smile, then hey, even during a high pressure situation, like you're able to still be human, you're able to still be confident. And so seeing those traits are always great. Speak confidently and clearly. So um, I think personally the biggest red flag for me, if you're interviewing at Microchip and I'm in front of you, um, if you give me a response that doesn't answer my question, I'm kind of like, okay, I might ask a follow up question just to try to get you to answer it again, or I might just pass on. So if you get asked a question and maybe you didn't hear the entire thing or you don't understand it, go ahead and just, ask me again. Tell me to present it in a different way where that at least shows me that, hey, you thought about your response before you answered the question. Um, and just to go back to your behavior, like, hey, be aware of your body language. So I don't I personally, I know some people, they tend to cross their arms when they're nervous and stuff like that, and I don't mind. But there is a subconscious thing that HR recruiters do where if we see that your body language isn't very engaging, like you're slouching in your chair, and all that, then it might end up being that factor between you and the other person I'm going to interview. Um, Definitely show energy and enthusiasm. Come prepared with some thoughtful questions. So like, um, I tend to encourage people to, hey, talk about a future with the company, just because it shows that, hey, you took the initiative to show that you're not only trying to help the company, but you're also trying to develop yourself. Um, you can, I would talk about payments after your job offer. If the recruiter starts talking to you about, the pay and stuff like that, then yeah, that could be the opportunity if you're trying to find that information quicker. But if you are able to hold on, then I would hold off on discussing pay or any like merits or stuff like that after you get your job offer. So once you finish your interview, definitely follow up with a thank you email. I think that's a lost art right now. If you do that, some of my coworkers will kind of remember that and be like, oh, okay, maybe I'll schedule another interview with you. Regularly check your email and voicemail. Um, Sometimes like we will email you instead of calling you, just being like, hey, like great interview, let's set up a meeting, just because it helps us organize too on our side. um, be willing and prepared to come back for additional interviews. Um, it's it's now kind of a common practice for candidates to go through two interviews instead of one with the HR recruiter and hiring manager, um, and accept rejection gracefully. So it's always a tough decision to hire somebody because it might of, hey, one of our job openings will have about 80 people apply, and from the 80 we'll narrow it down to 20. From the 20 we'll narrow it down to maybe 7 additional interviews for those 20 people. Or like we'll pick 7 people out of the 20 to do additional interviews is what I meant. And Yeah, like, and then at the end of the day, I'll be sitting in front of the hiring manager and we'll talk for an hour or two, just being like, hey, maybe we should do this one, or maybe we should do this one. Because at the end of the day, there's a lot of qualified people. There's a lot of um, people that have a similar work experience. So um, it's often really hard for hiring managers to kind of pick it. And so when you get rejected, don't take that as oh, you did terrible during the interview. uh, Oftentimes it's because the company's hands are tied with that type of stuff. And definitely don't get discouraged. Like during my 2020 job search, I searched for a job for about a year from 2020 to 2021, and I can't even count how many rejection letters I had. Microchip was one of the last applications I sent in before I was kind of convinced that maybe I had to pursue some different direction. And I ended up getting it. So like it's okay to fumble a couple interviews. I fumbled my first interview. I think I stuttered like 17 times, it felt like. But I slowly got better and better. And now I'm able to present in front of people. So, like, learn, practice, and keep at it. Um, and yeah, that finishes my presentation here. Thank you for listening. Does anybody have any questions?
All right, looks like big ones come in here. Thank you for your time and for hosting this great workshop. I have a few questions below and would appreciate it if you could provide brief answers. How should a job seeker with no experience or formal education draft a resume? And do you know if there are companies or job opportunities that they should target?
If you don't have any experience, then I'd first definitely, like, if money's a factor, then yes, apply to even like the restaurant industry. I know that right now it's getting better and better, and a lot of opportunities there. Got to start somewhere. So the restaurant industry, even at Microchip, we have something called a production specialist that the only requirements are being over 18 and having a GED or a high school diploma. So it's okay if you don't have a lot of experience, but to build some experience is my suggestion is to start volunteering. Like I volunteered at OMSI as a tour guide during high school, and that was on my resume, and I could speak about it, and that kind of helped me get my first job. But there's a lot of ways to do it. I wouldn't be, uh, I would definitely encourage people to just look at jobs regardless of how good your resume is, regardless of how long it is. Just because some job postings are literally like, "Hey, we will hire anybody that's over 18, has a GED." I think Amazon does that too.
Second question is, should job descriptions be included on a resume? And if so, how do I keep it from exceeding 1 page?
You don't have to. I would definitely I think to answer that question, tailor your resume to the job description, but you don't have to copy and paste it on there. Um, I would, if you're that new college grad, then yes, keep it at 1 page. And if pacing or adjusting your resume to match the job description makes it to 2 pages, then you're better off not doing that. Just because the job posting is for you guys. It's an advertisement for the public. So if you apply and you have the necessary skills, then it's not a red flag for me if you don't have anything on your resume that says stuff that our job description has.
And he's asking for an example of a good question that you would ask an employer at the end of an interview.
Um, a good question would probably be like, how does career development work here? Um, that's like my biggest thing that I asked a lot of people, just because that not only shows like, hey, I want to stay here potentially for a long time compared to maybe a candidate that I just interviewed saying that, hey, I just need money now. I wouldn't be afraid to be like, hey, like, do you have any questions for me? Put the questions back on the recruiter. If you don't have anything else, then yeah, it's okay to not have that many. But it'll help you stick out if you have that one question of, hey, like, what does career development look like here?
All right, Deanne is asking, does it help to do an internship?
It definitely does, especially if you're getting an internship. If you have an internship within the industry you want to tackle, internships, like, to kind of connect with the previous question, is also a good way to build a resume. Oftentimes, their internships don't require any work experience. It only requires being currently enrolled in a school. So those are kind of a few gimme. And at Microchip, we've actually hired 13 interns to be full-time engineers within the last 1.5 years. So it's definitely, I feel like it's a crime if you don't pursue those internships, because it's another opportunity you might have.
She's also asking if you will be able to share your presentation with everyone.
Sure, yeah, I'll send it to Grace because I don't have all the people's emails here.
Oh, understandable. Yeah, definitely. And I think I do have the presentation already in my inbox. So I just, I wanted to double check with you if I can send it to everybody.
Yeah, no, it's fine.
Okay. And then Deanna has 30 years experience, but out of the job market the last 4 years due to many illnesses. Any suggestions to explain this gap?
I'd be upfront with it with the recruiter. It's not uncommon for people to be a caretaker or go through illnesses themselves that prevent them from pursuing the job market. If that is a reason why a company disqualifies you, then that's a red flag on you. Like, you can definitely be like, okay, that's good, because if they're not looking at me because I was sick or something like that, then if you end up getting that job, you probably won't like it. So if you're upfront about it with the recruiter, that cover letter is a tool that you can use to just be like, hey, this is why I wasn't able to, work for 4 years. And I think the most often example that I get is like childcare. Like, that's so across the board very common. So like, if you are taking care of a kid for like 4 years until they're able to go to first grade without you worrying about it, that's a rational thing. As a recruiter, I'm thinking to myself like, okay, great, I won't factor in the 4-year gap.
What are your thoughts on informational interviews, and does Microchip allow for that?
We currently don't do informational interviews. We do fab tours here. So I believe like one of the things that we do, like, because like the fab tour itself will have an informational interview built into it, where like, hey, we're not only going to explain our industry, but also, uh, show you what it is like in the clean room, and then provide a session where, hey, I'm going to be in front of everyone, so you can just sound off on me. Maybe an engineer will be with me. So I think that might be the necessary natural step to work with Insight. Um, but we currently don't have informational interviews. So
I find them very helpful for like learning about the company,
yeah,
seeing if it's really a good fit for you. And, sometimes even getting your foot in the door, and you might not start where you want, but once you work and perform well, and then, you're able to transfer into a more appropriate department, or one that you would rather work in, different field or whatever.
oh, definitely. That happens here all the time. Like we have people who transfer from departments. They start as production operators and they end up going to our logistics department, or our we have a couple interns actually that are working in our engineer departments that were originally production specialists. So um, for informational interviews, like a lot of times, like I think the best ones are through your connections, because they're not going to sugarcoat things with you. So if you start going to these Insight fairs, and maybe you'll befriend like Chris Oman, one of our recruiters that go there all the time, and we can be pretty. The good thing about working at Microchip and my team is that I'm able to be pretty transparent. Like I'm encouraged to be as transparent as possible. So fairs are another way to kind of understand the company too.
All right, there, she just had one more comment, and she says, I think you have to use your own network to get an informational interview.
Yeah, definitely. Just because like I know a couple of people who have actually gotten connected with our engineering supervisors, and maybe regardless of what they did, like maybe it's a golfing buddy, or maybe it's a dartboard tournament or something like that, and then you build those connections through those social events, and then you might be able to during a time of need be like, hey, can you tell me about Microchip, like I'm looking for a job, and it'll help you out in the long run. So
Absolutely.
mhm.
So anyone else have any questions? And you can unmute and speak them if you like, or in the chat's fine too, but I have a couple minutes left here. I thought it was interesting, Aden, when you said that when you were applying for that job, that they talked to you about extracurricular activity more than anything else.
It was like my interview was an hour long, and it was about 40 minutes of my interview on one
Uh,
specific extracurricular. So it's like I I want to like have everyone leave this session as like every hiring manager, every recruiter is different. So if you're being true to yourself, and you're presenting yourself in a way where you're not feeling like you're faking it to fit the cookie cutter mold, it's only going to help you. Just because like that's what helped me, and I'm still working at Microchip after 3 years, and I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed the job security, the experience I have overall. So like that kind of ended up being like, okay, like maybe halfway through my year, I was starting to be like, oh, I need to act away. I had an interview with a recruiter that was like, I need killers. I need people who are super aggressive to be recruiters. And I ended up getting to the final stage of that interview, and I was like, this isn't me. So like, I luckily made the decision of, hey, I'm not going to pursue this, because if I had to keep bringing that same attitude to work, it's tiring. So um, just being yourself is the best bet, honestly.
Anybody else have any comments or questions?
Question.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm a caseworker and a case manager and employment specialist. So some of the people that I work with have training and trying to get into a new industry with a credential, but they don't have the experience. How would you speak to that in an interview? So for this industry per se, it's a certified recovery mentor. or peer support specialist, right? So that's very specific. And a lot of people are looking for a specific background in that, right? So a lot of these people don't have the background, so how would we, like, maybe transferable skills or something like that, but how would you speak to that?
So my tip for people who don't have work experience but have taken the initiative to get a credential, to lean on the fact that, hey, I am moldable. I already have shown that I've taken the initiative to pursue this role by getting that certification. So really lean on the fact that, hey, compared to the tenured person that you might have interviewed, like, I will work a lot harder. I will take initiative because at the end of the day, I'm also learning. And being a learner, being a student means that I'm going to be more engaging. I'm going to be more available for you to help, to depend on. When I was a new college grad at one point, and I was literally like, hey, like, at the end of the day, like, I know there's a lot of these people who are quitting their own jobs, going for these entry level positions for the sake of remote work. And like, I was really presenting myself as a, hey, like, I'm going to work 10 times harder. Like, just because I've shown it already. I added in a business administration minor just to prepare myself for HR. I had no relevant HR experience, but I had recruitment experience. So like, stuff like that, the cover letter will help you out. Talking about it to the recruiter will also help out, the people you help out. And Yeah, I would just keep going, because a lot of times, like, I was kind of underqualified for my job right now. And I've been able to, like, okay, show them that I can do it. I just need a little bit of training. That's it. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, sort of an underscore to that as well. So I'm actually working with people getting out of jails and prisons. So that's another layer. Um, and speaking to that, um, lapse. Um, I mean, I know a lot of industries, maybe your company does not hire certain, or they have flexibility with some charges and such. How would you speak to that?
So it's good to be upfront. You're kind of hitting on the dot. Every company has a different uh, viewpoint for people who've done time. At Microchip, we definitely factor in what charges they are. If it's a violent crime, unfortunately, we don't hire. However, a lot of times, like, we view the criminal, like, system, to be something where it's like, hey, like, you've improved, like, you got out of jail, you're able to, be able functional, you just have to have a little bit of help to be a functional member of society. So it's not a knock when somebody did some time and it's like, okay, like, you actually did, you went out of it, you're a better person. So being upfront about it is important. It'll help your clients not waste their time. Because if it's a violent offender, then I can just be like, hey, like, I'm sorry, I can't hire you. Um, but if that, like, my example is, we had a candidate who was great, honestly, like, super great. He went through the initial interview, went through the second interview. I was about to give him a job, but he didn't disclose that he had a conviction. And this whole process was about 3 weeks. And I felt terrible for the guy, because, like, we let him on for 3 weeks being like, hey, I'm going to hire you. But he didn't tell us about his conviction. So, like, it'll be only a time saver for people to just be upfront about it. Because at Microchip, we do hire people with records, depending on what it is. But for the sake of the job seekers' time, like, I know people can't afford to wait 3 weeks and then get rejected, versus, the day of, I can have to at least be like, hey, you did great on your interview. I like this and this about it. Keep going. But yeah, I can't hire you, unfortunately, due to policy or something like that.
I imagine that was a lesson learned on your end as well, just to pop it up and say, just to let you know, there's a background check. Is there anything we're gonna find, right?
Yep, we put it on our job postings. After that situation itself, like, it was, uh, like, we updated our reference, or, like, when we give out, like, our reference paper, just to be sure. And we've taken proactive steps, but it's, unfortunately, a lot of people are nervous when they have a record and they don't want to talk about it. We understand it, but to be upfront will only help people save time.
Right, definitely.
And it's a character thing too. Like, okay, at least we were honest about it and all that stuff. So
Thank you.
thank you.
And I think it's a positive, to come clean or whatever, and then just say, hey, give me a second chance. Like I'm really, I want to do better, and I want a job, and I want to be productive in society, and I know that I'd be a good asset to your company, and
Yep, exactly. Like
it shows your character, right?
mhm.
All right. Anybody else have a question before we end the session?
Yes. Hi, Grace. This is Verenia from IRCO. So
Hi,
yes,
Anna.
hi. So I just really want to ask several questions. So I'm supporting people in the city of Gresham. And so the job seekers that I support in Gresham, I mean, I have a lot of difficulty because they have a high school diploma, but they do not, they limited English. So will you hire any one of my clients with limited English?
At Microchip, it depends. So like limited English is varying degrees, right? So like one of our job requirements for all jobs is to like it's found in the interview, but for our entry level position, the production specialist position, they go through a reading comprehension test because it's vital for their job to be able to read instructions, communicate effectively, either in person or online or on Teams, right? So we definitely have hired people who their English was their second language, but they were able to show that, hey, I can communicate regardless. So like limited English is kind of a big spectrum where it's like some people, like, yes, they might not understand this type of conversation we're having right now, but if they pass that reading comprehension test and they're able to kind of interview with me, like I factor that in too. I'll speak slower, I'll figure it out from there, and hopefully hire. So it's not impossible for somebody who doesn't speak English as a primary language to get a job at Microchip.
Okay, because if I refer a client to you, well, first of all, do you have any openings, entry-level positions at the moment?
So currently we don't. I'm sure everyone's heard of like the massive layoffs that tech industries have gone through. Unfortunately, it's representative of the semiconductor companies. Like it's a terrible time right now. But we're projecting like every quarter we reevaluate how many openings that we can push out. We're currently in the middle of a quarter, so I believe in January I'll have a better answer. But as of right now, we're not hiring.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, anybody else have any questions or comments? Great. Well, you did a wonderful job, Aden. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise and your time with us.
Thank you.
I will share out not only your presentation, but we'll have this event up on our website for anybody that, if they want to watch it again. The gal that usually does that for me is on vacation this week, though, so I might not get that up on till next Monday, but I can definitely share out your presentation.
Great. Well, thanks for having me, Grace. It was fun.
Absolutely.
And I'm happy that so many people came to the session. So
Yes.
thank you guys again. Hopefully you guys leave with confidence that you'll be able to get a job.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.